Hello and welcome back to Ready Steady DIY. If it's your first time here, thank you for joining us. If you're already subscribed, thank you for subscribing. Well, as you know, I work in the film and television industry, and if you've ever seen a film set working late at night, you know we work pretty weird hours. You got to stay focused and you got to work late, and the combination of those two things can be pretty deadly without coffee. So accordingly, the people in my business really appreciate a good cup of coffee. And something I've noticed is that while on set or on location, almost everybody in my business agrees that the AEROPRESS is the tool of choice for making a travel coffee. I have used an AEROPRESS to make coffee in the jungles of Brazil, in remote Nunavut, and in more hotels than I care to mention. So I figure if we like it, maybe you would too. And I gotta say, none of my DIY projects have ever gone ahead in any meaningful way without a cup of coffee first. So if you like coffee and you haven't tried the AEROPRESS, or you're thinking about it, you've heard of it, but you're not certain about what it is or how it works, this is a beginner's guide, an introduction, if you will, to the AEROPRESS. Because while it doesn't, for me, replace my espresso machine every morning, when I travel, I AEROPRESS. It's just how I work. So I'm not sure if it's for everybody, but it certainly works for me. So if you're interested at all, let's check it out. So first, what is it? The AEROPRESS is a simple, cheap, durable, light, and also repairable solution for making a pretty good cup of coffee. A lot of people use it as their primary coffee tool. For me, it doesn't replace my espresso machine. That's like a totally different kind of coffee, a totally different cup of coffee. But the AEROPRESS is pretty good. I use it all the time when I travel. It is an excellent travel coffee making solution. It costs 30 to 35 bucks US or around $45 Canadian, and it's made of plastic. This is where a lot of people stumble on it. People say brewing coffee, hot, liquid, plastic. I'm not sure about that. The plastic is BPA free, it's phthalate free. For me, that gives some peace of mind. But it being plastic is kind of also what's brilliant about it. That's what makes it so light, that's what makes it durable, that's what makes it so easy to pack into a suitcase and take it with you wherever. Also, all of the parts of the AEROPRESS are really intelligently designed. It was created in 2005 by Adler. He came up with a method for making himself a cup of coffee. It turned into a business, and now it's a pretty big one. There are a couple different kinds of AEROPRESS on the market right now. The kind I have is the standard kind. They do have a AEROPRESS Go version, which is supposed to be a slightly smaller, more travelable version, but I don't know if that was such a good idea. The original AEROPRESS travels brilliantly, and for traveling purposes, that's the one most people in my business use, and I would recommend for you too. So when you buy a standard AEROPRESS, inside the box, you will find a number of items. You will find a plunger with a silicone tip. You will find a chamber for brewing coffee in. It's usually marked up the sides with numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are meant as rough guidelines for indicating volume. There's a funnel. A lot of people throw the funnel away right away. I use it. There's a lot of uses for it you might not know otherwise. We'll get into that later. There's over 300 little paper filters. They're a lot thinner than the classic coffee filter you may be familiar with. And there's a holder for those filters too. There's a filter cap inside of which you can fit your filter and then screw onto the chamber where you do the brewing. There's a stir stick and there is a measuring spoon, both of which are pretty useful. The stir stick is excellent. It's devised to not scrape the filter at the bottom of the chamber. It's perfectly built so that you can't scrape the bottom and move the filter while you're stirring. And the spoon fits perfectly inside the chamber, so you can grind a heaping spoonful of coffee, insert it into the filter, and dump it. You won't miss. And if you buy the travel version, it comes with a handy little zip-up pouch so that you can throw it all in there and take it with you when you travel. Super convenient. All of these items are made of plastic, which makes them really, really easy to travel with. They almost never break. One awesome thing about the company though is if you do have some issues, one common issue is the silicone plunger, particularly if you don't store it properly, it can get compressed and not work as well. They do sell replacements. I think that's really great. Any company that will allow you to repair an object that they sell is okay in my books. So now we know what you get when you buy it, but how do you use it? Well, this is where things get a little bit contestable. There are a lot of very strong opinions about how to use an AEROPRESS to get the best cup of coffee. But there are two sort of main methods, and we'll go over those now. The first I'll call the Adler method, because it's the method that is put forth by the inventor of the AEROPRESS. It's a very straightforward, simple method, and it does work, and it makes a very nice cup of coffee. He calls it a sweet cup of coffee. I wouldn't call it sweet, but I would definitely say it's not bitter at all. And that's good. I like that. I like starting my day that way. Basically, you typically start with the plunger inside of the chamber. As I mentioned before, if you store the plunger in the middle of the chamber so that the silicone tip is compressed inside the chamber, you're gonna slowly damage that and it's not gonna work. You want it to pinch the sides of the chamber perfectly as you're plunging, so its rest position should be poked all the way through so that it's poking out the bottom and not compressed against the inner sides of the chamber or separate to it completely. If you've stored it inside the chamber, poked all the way through, you're gonna wanna poke it out, and then you grab your filter cap and you put a filter in it. At this point, some people would rinse the filter in hot water. I never do. You twist the filter cap onto the bottom of the chamber, and now it's ready to receive some coffee grounds. When you grind coffee for an AEROPRESS, they say it should come somewhere between the super fine grind of an espresso and a medium grind, somewhere in between those two. I grind mine to look just like this. It seems to work. So you pick your sturdiest mug or cup. In this case, I'm going to use a clear cup so you can sort of see it go. You put the chamber on top. Obviously, the mouth of the mug has to be big enough to receive the filter cap itself, but not so big that the rim of the chamber can't rest on top of it. That's a lot of mugs. You're gonna not have trouble finding a good, sturdy, flat cup upon which to put your coffee. I can't stress the sturdiness enough. There's nothing worse than waking up in the morning thinking you're making a coffee and then having it end up all over the floor. Once you get the coffee into the AEROPRESS chamber, give it a shake and level the coffee out. Next step is to add water. If you're boiling water separately, your goal is to hit 80 degrees Celsius water, according to the AEROPRESS folks. You're probably wondering if you need to pull out your thermometer right now. Basically, the rule of thumb is you're taking boiling water and you're letting it come off of boiling a little bit. Boiling water, obviously 100 degrees Celsius. You want 80 degrees Celsius or 175 Fahrenheit. So basically you're trying to get it to cool about 1/5 of the way. You pour the water in. The Adler method requires that you pour the water into the 1.5 mark or maybe a little bit higher than that. And then you give it a 10-second stir with the paddle. And then you're ready to insert the plunger. Put it in gently and push down. AEROPRESS notes that if you feel resistance, just let it come back up. The whole goal here is not to push too hard. Almost everybody agrees with that one. If you push too hard, you're going to compress the coffee into a really tight puck at the bottom of the chamber, and it's going to take longer to push the coffee through. The whole point with the Adler technique, according to the inventor of it himself, is to try to get the water through the coffee as quickly as possible. He feels that a longer brew time creates more bitterness and a worse tasting coffee. So if you don't push hard, ironically, the water goes through quicker. If you push hard, the water will not go through as quickly because you'll be creating this giant impediment of compressed coffee at the bottom of the chamber. Once the plunger reaches the bottom, you'll start to hear a little fizzy sound. That's a good indication you're done. And then as far as cleanup goes, you really just unscrew the filter cap and then you just push the plunger all the way through. The little puck of coffee will pop right off. You can put it into a container and dispose of it as you wish. And according to Adler, if you're gonna drink it like espresso, drink it like that. That's an espresso shot to him. If you prefer an American coffee, you add a little water, as much water as you prefer, and you'll have what's effectively an Americano or an American style of coffee. I guess you can add milk to it too. I think he does that, but that's not a kind of coffee drink I do. And there you have it, folks, the Adler method for the AEROPRESS. From the inventor himself, that's exactly the kind of coffee he was trying to make when he invented this product, and it does work. I would say the coffee that method makes would have the widest appeal, so I can understand why the company pitches that method. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Everybody can wrap their head around it. It's the least complicated, the least likely to have an accident, and it makes a pretty good cup of coffee. There's nothing wrong with the Adler method. I like the coffee it makes. However, on the other side of things, the world of coffee is filled with some very passionate people. There are now championships where people compete to make the best AEROPRESS coffee. And at those championships, if you watch them, the Adler method is not as common as you might think. Almost every fancier method that uses the AEROPRESS uses the inverted method or some way of keeping the water in the chamber longer. In order to do that, most people turn to what's called the inverted method. They use their AEROPRESSes upside down. It's actually not that hard to do. In some ways, it's simpler and easier to do than the Adler method. The AEROPRESS people feel like there's an increased risk of spilling or having an accident. I've never had an accident doing it this way, but you might, so take it with a grain of salt. But generally, the way the inverted method works, you take a clean plunger and you put it just inside the very top of the chamber. Maybe you're putting it in like, I don't know, 1/2 inch or something like that. And now it's pinched in there pretty well. And you can stand it upside down. So the part of the plunger that you will eventually push on is now sitting on the table, and the part of the chamber where you will eventually attach the filter cap is sitting on the top. Since any plunger in good condition is not going to allow any leakage at all, You can pour water into this system upside down without any worries. If the silicone on the end of your plunger has become damaged, it will leak, so remember that. And basically, you take your favorite coffee, you grind it to your favorite grind. Typically, these kind of recipes are a little coarser than the recommended coarseness on AEROPRESS.com. But whatever you like, you take your coffee, you put it into the AEROPRESS just like you would if it were right side up. It falls down and hits the silicone of the plunger. You shake it out just like you would normally. And then you pour your water in on top of the coffee grounds. As long as your plunger's in good shape, it holds the whole thing up. There's no problems with leakage or anything like that. Then you stir it for about 10 seconds, put your filter in your filter cap, screw that on, and leave it. Typically, people let it sit in there for a minute, minute 15, something like that. And now you're ready to flip it. I take the cup and put it right on top of the filter thing. So now I've got a big stack. It's pretty huge. And then I just flip the whole thing upside down. So the cup bottom is now touching the table. The plunger top is now right at the top where it needs to be plunged. And I slowly plunge down. The slower you do it, the better it is. I would say at least 20 seconds. Some people take longer. And then in the end, you get a coffee. You get a full coffee. If you're trying to do an Americano style coffee, your cup will be full. You don't need to consider it like espresso and add water to make your Americano. Most people are trying to make an Americano when they make this. So to me, the inverted method makes a lot of sense. So in the end, what are my conclusions regarding the AEROPRESS? Well, so you can tell it does not replace my espresso machine. Everyday use, I still use an espresso machine. The kind of coffee it makes is just totally different. I love the experience, the crema, everything else about it. But if I can't have that experience, the AEROPRESS to me is the next best thing. It's better than going to Starbucks. It's better than going to a donut shop. It's better than getting coffee at the hotel. And if you're in a place where there is no coffee, well then it's better than that too. So I hope that helps you out. If it did, please feel free to like or subscribe and make sure to hit the bell button for notifications so you know the minute I post new content. But even if you don't do that, you're gonna know I post new content because I do it every Saturday. If you're already subscribed, please feel free to leave a comment. Comments help me make the channel better, and that's what I'm after. So until next week, take care, stay safe, have fun with your DIY projects, and I'll see you next Saturday.